Mm-hmm. Can speak? Okay. Is it fine now? Okay, great. Very good evening, everyone. We will kickstart the discussion just now on the Santiago network on loss and damage, catalyzing technical assistance for enhanced resilience. As we all know about Santiago network, it's one of the key facilities in the loss and damage landscape, focusing on technical assistance. My name is Animesh Kumar. I'm the head of UNDRR office in Bonn, and here representing the co-host of the Secretariat together with UNOPS. The purpose of this specific event is to give a broad overview of Santiago network and also provide an update on the progress on where we are as of now, and also get back to you with all the questions and interaction that we will have. The event itself will have two segments. In the first segment, we will have an overview presentation on the progress. And in the second segment, we'll break into a fishbowl style of interaction, where we will invite members of the audience to join the panelists and seek questions and more information, provide your own perspective, and that we will do by rotation depending on the time we have. So with that, I will invite the panel in front. We are the Santiago Network Advisory Board being represented by our co-chair, Mr. Akio Takemoto, as the co-chair of the Advisory Board of the Santiago Network. And we have the other co-chair, Mr. Alpha Kaloga, who sends his regards and regretfully can't join us in the evening today because he's in the negotiations. We are also joined by Ms. Carolina Fuentes, newly appointed director of the Santiago Network Secretariat, so who also is joining us now. We will shortly be joined by Mr. Brian Maltera, loss and damage coordinator of Vanuatu being the first country being technically assisted through Santiago Network. So with that, let me invite Mr. Akio Takemoto, co-chair of Santiago Network Advisory Board, to make his remarks. Akio, please.
Hello, can you hear me? It's okay. Okay. Dear colleagues and friends, let me begin by expressing thanks to the Resilience Hub for hosting this event on the Santiago Network. Thank you for joining in person and online also. My name is Akio Takemoto, one of the co-chairs of the advisory board of the Santiago Network. It's my pleasure to be here today to bring remarks on behalf of the advisory board. So this year's COP will continue to advance on progress made year after year on operationalizing the Santiago network. But more broadly, the loss and damage landscape. The Santiago network is a part of the Warsaw International Mechanism for Loss and Damage, or the WIM for short. The WIM was established in 2013 and commemorated its 10-year anniversary at the last COP. The Executive Committee, or EXCOM, was also established then with a mandate to guide the implementation of the function of the WIM. Several years later, in 2019, the Santiago Network was established under the WIM, and thereby broadening the landscape on loss and damage, but more specifically on technical assistance for action to avert, minimizing, and addressing loss and damage. As it now stands, the advisory board was constituted and it is in its first year of operation, made significant progress in fulfilling its mandate. Of note is that the board approved the main operative guidelines relating to membership and technical assistance to allow of countries to access this support in a more streamlined and structured manner. Any discussion on the loss and damage landscape must also reflect on the fund for responding to loss and damage established in 2022. Full operation is ongoing, but parties were clear in their intention to see the Santiago network and its members contribute to coherence by aligning technical assistance with efforts to build capacity and support the programmatic approaches of the funding arrangements and the fund. As the advisory board, we agreed to explore how to strengthen the collaboration and coherence between the ExCom and the board of the fund. There are two members of the ExCom that sit on the advisory board, which helps with alignment of the respective work program. We formally reached out to the board as well to provide updates on the progress being made on Santiago Network, and a further update will be provided as agreed at the third meeting of the advisory board in September. This year was pivotal for the Santiago Network in being fully operational. There are now clear guidelines on how organizations, bodies, networks, and experts, so-called overlays, can become members of the network and thus respond to requests for technical assistance from developing countries. Importantly, also are the guidelines to submit requests for technical assistance. The supporting processes are being rolled out, such as streamlining how requests are made through online portals, among other things. The portal is functional for those that intend to submit expressions of interest for membership. Over time, the guidelines will be translated into all UN languages. More information is available on the Santiago Network website. This is a pivotal year for the WIM as it will be reviewed by parties. The inaugural report of the Santiago Network is among the inputs of this process. And my co-chair participated in the event hosted by the chairs of the subsidiary bodies earlier today. We encourage you to read this report. The advisory board will action as appropriate decisions from this review as we seek to continue being a critical pillar in the loss and damage landscape. Before closing, please allow me to also acknowledge the presence of the director of the Santiago Network's Secretariat, Ms. Carolina Funetes Castellanos. She commenced just a few days ago and has awesome task of leading the Secretariat in fulfilling its functions. I wish to reiterate thanks to everyone for being here and for their keen interest and support in making the Santiago Network effective. This session is intended to be interactive, so we invite you to engage and ask questions. Best wishes for successful events. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Akio-san. Let's give him a big round of applause for the remarks. And one of the things that Akio-san very well pointed out is that we are on the rollout stage. The operationalization of the Santiago Network has begun. I would also like to acknowledge within the audience our other Santiago Network board members present. We have Mr. Samuel representing children and youth. We have Mr. Gideon representing the indigenous populations. That is the beauty of Santiago Network Advisory Board, that we not only have parties as members, but we also have representatives of stakeholders on the board as a governing body of the Santiago Network. And I would also like to acknowledge Mr. Andrew Kirkwood representing UNOPS as the head of the Geneva office. With that, Akio-san had already pointed out some broad overview of the progress being made in operationalizing of the Santiago Network. To learn more, I'm very pleased to invite Carolina, the new director of the Santiago Network Secretariat, to run us through a presentation on where we are as of now. Carolina, over to you.
Thank you very much, Animesh, and thank you very much, Akio. I'm very honored also to be joined by you and to be joined in the audience also by board members and representatives of stakeholders of our board, and of course also with the presence of our co-hosts, Andrew here and Animesh. Many thanks also for the co-hosting support that you are offering to the Santiago network. Akio has already mentioned, our co-chair, the important progress that has been achieved over 2024, and also that has led to the Santiago Network being in place and operational. to be able to activate technical support in 2025. Just allow me also to go into more details about the network. And of course, now I'm very pleased to join as the director. And perhaps also Akio has introduced me, but to note, I'm Carolina Fuentes. I'm joining the network also with a big commitment to make sure that we continue making progress on the basis also of the progress that's been made by the interim secretariat with the support of our co-hosts. And that will be a good foundation also to make sure that we move ahead with the provision of concrete technical assistance in the coming year and years. Now, going back to the very basics, what is the network and what does the network do? You have here a presentation, and I will be going through it just to provide you a general information about the Santiago network. We are a network of organizations that supports developing countries and vulnerable communities with the provision of technical assistance to avert, minimize, and address loss and damage. How do we do this? This is to be through the catalytic role of the Santiago network, catalyzing technical assistance, and that technical assistance is to come from a diversity of partners, is to come from organizations, bodies, networks, and experts with capabilities on technical assistance for loss and damage, and for this to take place at the national, local, regional, and international level. That is our mandate. This can take the form of knowledge, resources, and technical assistance. Moving on with the presentation, of course, we sit within a larger loss and damage architecture. The international community has achieved important milestones in setting up the institutional arrangements to address loss and damage, the Santiago network being one of them. But we also have some other important mechanisms that have been established. We have the Varso International Mechanism that was established in 2013. Of course, the Executive Committee of the WIM, the Santiago Network, that is one of the arms of the WIM. And we have also the Fund for Responding to Loss and Damage that was just recently established. Now, continuing with the milestones, here we have a timeline as well on when these important achievements took place. We have, of course, the Varso International Mechanism being set up in 2013, and since then, the negotiations have been very active, also in terms of ensuring that there is an institutional framework to support developing countries in averting, minimizing, and addressing loss and damage. Part of that timeline includes also, of course, the reference in the Paris Agreement to loss and damage, and also some important steps taken that have taken place in relation to the Santiago network. One of the key also milestones reached when it comes to the Santiago network was the agreement last year during COP28 of co-hosting arrangements for the network with UNOPS and UNDRR as co-hosts of the Santiago network. This shows the governance of the Santiago network. We are accountable to the governing body and bodies of the COP and the CMP. We have an advisory board that is constituted by 14 members and 3 stakeholder representatives. And we have a secretariat that is to be efficient, lean, to operate and to implement the functions of the network. One of our unique features is that we are to do matchmaking between the developing countries that need support and technical assistance for loss and damage, and also the provision of technical assistance. And that is why we have here developing countries and technical assistance, because that speaks also to the matchmaking role that we are intended to perform. Now, you have here the functions of the Santiago network, and just very broadly making reference to the headings that we have here. We are to contribute also to the implementation of the agreements that have been reached by parties during the climate negotiations to support countries in addressing loss and damage, and this in the context of the Varso International Mechanism. We also support different approaches to address loss and damage. And this includes, of course, both existing challenges, but also forward-looking and future challenges. So we operate at both scales, making sure that we address immediate needs, but also that we build long-term capacities. Enhancing access to information and knowledge, this is also one of the key functions of the Santiago network. And it's been identified also in the conversations here that access to data and information is one of the main gaps for addressing loss and damage, and it's also one of the basic elements for having an effective response. Some other functions here is catalyzing, and this goes to the heart of the Santiago network, catalyzing technical assistance in a demand-driven manner. This means that the technical assistance requests come from countries and vulnerable communities, and they are to be also capacitated to be able to design a request that is reflective of their priorities and reflective of their needs. That is the demand-drivenness that we have at the heart of our identity. Also promoting collaboration and coherence, and our co-chair Akio was making reference to how important it is to consider the work of the Santiago network in the larger context of the institutional arrangements for loss and damage, including the fund for responding to loss and damage. And access to finance, technology, and capacity building, of course, this is also part of the mandates of the Santiago network, that we effectively mobilize a wide range of resources for countries to be able to effectively respond to loss and damage. Here, now we move to the members of the network. And in terms of the membership of the network, this is also one of the important progress that's been made over this year. Now a process for expressions of interest of members that want to become part of the Santiago network is in place, that is up and running, and is in full motion. So that is one of the major achievements that we're very happy to report at this COP. There is also the possibility for those interested organizations, bodies, and experts to apply online through the submission of an expression of interest. Now becoming member to the network has different benefits, and we're listing those benefits here. As part of that, the members of the network, they will have the possibility of responding to calls for proposals. These calls for proposals will reflect the requests coming from communities and from developing countries in terms of the technical assistance needs. If there is a member of the network that is capable of responding to that request, then a submission can be made to the network, and through an assessment process, a submission that best meets the needs of the developing country will be awarded as well, with the development and the support to be provided for that particular request. Also, the intent is that the organizations benefit from their respective experience. So apart from supporting with technical assistance, they also form a community where they can benefit from one another, and they can learn also from each other's experiences. Showcasing also their services in the areas of loss and damage is another benefit that we offer to the network, and share and exchange knowledge and expertise with other members of the network. Networking, of course, and contribute and benefit from the work being done on loss and damage is also part of the benefits that we are trying to promote for members of the network, and that we are also incentivizing through this network scheme. Here, in more detail, the process of membership. And as mentioned, interested organizations, bodies, experts, and network are very much invited and welcomed to apply. We need you. We need to mobilize capacities at all levels, at the local level, national, regional, and global level. So if you identify yourself as an organization that can support countries with technical assistance on loss and damage, please don't hesitate to submit a request or to reach out to the Secretariat, also for us to assist you on the requirements to become a member. There is a process already in place, as noted earlier, and in the Santiago Network portal, you are able also to submit an expression of interest. This is made available on a rolling basis. So basically, at any point in time when you feel that you are ready, you can apply and submit an expression of interest. We're now precisely building up that network, and we're very interested in tapping in the expertise that is out there at different levels. Now we're moving to the technical assistance part. And here we are to provide, as noted, technical assistance in a demand-driven manner. And this is done through the network of members that we have. That matchmaking process between the communities and the countries when there is a need and the members of the network is part of what we do. And that technical assistance, of course, is provided in the form of resources, technology, and support from the OBNEs to the countries. One also important development is the adoption by the board, and also the board has been very active during this year with 3 meetings, and in those meetings, the operational guidelines of the Santiago network have been adopted. One of those is the guidelines for technical assistance requests. Those are in place, and also the guidelines for the management of funding. So the operational guidelines for us to operate are in place, have been adopted by the board, and that positions the Santiago network in a good place to be able to implement technical assistance in a practical manner in 2025. Just catching up and making a summary of the progress made. The Santiago Network Board has held 3 meetings over 2024 to advance the work of the network, and important policies have been put in place. Also, the recruitment of the secretariat that is taking place. My appointment is part of that, but also the recruitment of other positions, which is ongoing. Also, the location of the secretariat. The location is in Geneva, and there are current discussions taking place at the board level about the regional scope of the Santiago network. Also, in terms of progress, the rules of procedure of the board of the Santiago network have been adopted by the board, and also on advocacy and outreach events have taken place, and we have held webinars in different regions, including in relation to the webinars that have been hosted together with workshops conducted on disaster risk reduction with the support of UNDRR, and those webinars are region specific. So we're also aiming to gain that knowledge and region specificity through the development of these webinars. This is a progress that has been made, and of course, this in a way constitutes the elements that will allow us to provide technical assistance and to have a process that is fit for purpose, and a process that can help us in support and respond to the requests coming from countries and from vulnerable communities. I stop here, and of course, will be available to respond to any questions that you may have and to engage very interactively in this conversation.
Thanks a lot, Carolina. So now we will move to the next session. And the next session is requesting the audience to join the panel. So basically what we're doing is to have a fishbowl setting. So I would invite co-chair Akio-san to join us again. And Carolina, if you could take that seat. And now I invite 2 members of the audience to join us with your questions. You might have many questions from the presentation and the remarks that have been made so far. So instead of you raising a hand and asking a question, we're responding and then somebody else doing so. We ask you to deep dive into your set of questions, exhaust them, and then we will keep rotating it. So please, I need 2 persons, 2 volunteers to begin with from the audience to join us. Please. 1 more person. I know almost every second person in the audience, so before I volunteer you, please. Please come. Here is your weapon. And please shoot. You can go ahead, ask any question based on what you think and if you need further clarification or information.
You can start and I can follow. I think that we're done. So my question is that what additional value this Santiago network will add to the local organization, especially because I am from Pakistan and I am leading the Pakistan Localization Lab in Pakistan. It's a 21 organization member lab. The purpose is that once we get to know that it is very obvious and evident that whenever any organization, they invest their time and energies to some network, they ultimately, there is a high expectation towards the network that we will get some financial benefit from the network. Ultimately, we do understand that networks never give they provide a positioning platform to the organizations to get the position themselves and then get to the. But what additional value it will add to the local organizations? Thank you.
That is right. Many thanks for that question. That is a very valid point because we are also mindful that organizations, they have their own priorities and their own reason of being, and dedicating time to an initiative is always demanding. So we need to honor as well the time that those organizations and the interest that they invest in the Santiago network. So that's a very valid and pertinent question. In terms of the value, one of the key features of the Santiago network is that we are matchmaking. We have a matchmaking function. That is one of our unique features, where we are also to identify and assist countries in the submission of their technical assistance requests, making sure that we identify a suitable organization, body, or expert in our membership that can address that technical assistance request. There is funding from the Santiago network as well that goes to that technical assistance request. It goes to the countries through the network of members. So that is part also of the value that we provide in terms of addressing one specific request. Now also there are some other important aspects that we want also to explore much more in terms of our value as a network in itself. And not only through the provision of the technical assistance in terms of funding, but also in terms of making sure that we tap into local expertise that most of times may not be used to respond to national and regional demands, and that we also create capacities in that network of OBNEs. Also the possibility of members to learn from one another and to showcase their services is another area as well, and another benefit, another value that we offer as a network. So we're trying also for this to be comprehensive, not only focusing on the funding part that we provide in terms of technical assistance, but also in the exchange of knowledge, information, communities of practice, etc. But very valid point, and one that we need also to address very clearly to interested OBNEs. And I hope that you submit an expression of interest.
Yeah. Can I have a follow-up question? Just to the follow-up question, do you think we are hosting, the secretariat of 21 local organizations? So shall we apply as a secretariat like Pakistan Localization Lab to be part of this network, or the individual entities like the 21 members should apply for the membership? What you suggest?
That is right. My suggestion also, now that you are organized, we need to capitalize on that organization that you have already in place. So the advice would be to apply as a network, and that's precisely why we have this diversity. Member organizations, networks, and experts can apply. So applying as a network already takes advantage of the organization that you have in place and in the convening power that you have to bring together those 21 members. That could be the advice, but we would be very happy to look at your specific expression of interest to provide you more detailed guidance.
I hope I'm audible. Yes, I am. Okay, I need to provide the summary of where I'm coming from because I just returned from the regional RP of Europe and Central Asia, and I was coordinating the children and youth engagement in that RP. Children and youth have very peculiar questions and very big interest towards the network because this is the network that might give them ground to organize themselves and become part of the network. But there are big questions whether their expertise can be utilized or whether it can be in any way beneficial for the decision makers because frequently their opinions and their views are overlooked. I have suggested to become part of it, but then later on, reading through the annual report that was published, there is currently no vision from my standpoint as well where the youth and children can be integrated at this point because it's not yet clear. I was just looking for answer towards this question.
So may I? Yes. Thank you very much for your interest in participating in the Santiago network. As you know, our advisory board engage representatives of youth and children, the Samuel, which is joining here. So we always engage the voices of youth and children representatives to the group of the advisory board. So we recognize that youth and children is one of the key, most vulnerable groups for loss and damage associated with climate impacts. At the same time, youth and children must play a key role for leading the technical assistance for the developing countries. So much welcome for joining our Santiago network as members. So I think for information, I participated in the COP16 of the Biodiversity Convention in Cali, Colombia, and there are many youth joining the conference, but many of whom are indigenous groups, and so there are a lot of commonalities that such stakeholder groups can play a key role to promote technical assistance. So I much appreciate your interest. So please submit the expression of interest to the Santiago Network. Thank you.
Okay, just for our audience as well to clarify one aspect. Children and youth as providers of advice and technical assistance should be ensured that they are integrated, right? In some cases, in certain governments who request technical assistance or who request financial assistance, they overlook children and youth themselves.
It's related to the question by you, the previous, gentleman. I think its additional value of Santiago Network is that this network can provide a direct technical assistance to the local vulnerable communities in the developing countries. So we have that kind of system. So also the request for technical assistance will go through the focal point of the national government, but it is, in principle, it is this, this resources was aimed to support the activities at the local and community scales and also vulnerable communities. So, including youth and children. So I hope that your group will be a part of the technical assistance provider that will create innovation in climate action. Thank you.
Thanks. So with that, we continue with the cycle. I would now invite, because we're talking about children, please keep sitting. Because I'm going to invite the children and youth representative on the advisory board to continue the discussion on children and youth, because that's such an important topic. Maybe we can keep that seat empty now and request somebody else to join us from the audience. Please, Sophie. Welcome, Samuel. Samuel Akori is the Children and Youth representative on the advisory board of the Santiago Network. And we are joined by another audience. And while we are changing continuing the rotation, I would also wanted to add that the question being asked between the networks and individual members of a network often comes. As per the guidance, the guidelines that we have is that we have different categories of membership within Santiago Network, and a network can join as a network. So if you are holding a network of different organizations, you can join as a network, and individual members of that network can also join as an organization. So, and that continues, so that joining as a network doesn't debar you from also applying individually as an organization. So let's move to the next cycle, and then I'll hand over back to the audience. Your next question. Maybe you want to continue with the children and youth. One more question you have to the children and youth representative on the boat. Or you want to think first? Okay.
No? Oh, yeah. Okay, great. So thank you, and congratulations on your appointment, and congratulations on the progress that the Santiago Network has made, especially this year. My question is around maybe getting a bit of a sense and a bit of a flavor for the requests that are coming in. I think it's been quite abstract and hard to sort of understand what sort of technical assistance countries are looking for, so it'd be really good to get a better sense of that. And to build on that, I think a question is around sort of different levels of government. So how much are we seeing coming from the national level? How much are we seeing really coming from the local level? I think some of this will also come into the role of local organizations and how they can respond to some of these requests. And as we know, there's often big divides between local government and national government. So I'm just interested to hear some of your reflections on that. And maybe with a final question to sort of round it out is around, this important role of matchmaking. How much are we seeing a synergy between these requests that are coming in and the technical provision that is coming in on the other side? Are you going to be able to do the matchmaking, or are we seeing quite different requests versus the provision of technical assistance that can be provided from the OBNEs? Thank you. Sorry? Oh, sorry, yes. And my name is Sophie Rigg. I'm with the Global Network for Disaster Reduction as a climate policy advisor. Thank you.
Perfect. Many thanks for that very important question, because that is precisely asking for details on the operationalization of the network, and we're making progress on that front. When it comes to the requests, at the moment we have received one request coming from Vanuatu, and we're working on that request also to make sure that we can translate that into a call for proposals that can be made available to the members of the network. Just to note that we're simultaneously also forming the membership of the network. It was just recently that we started the expressions of interest of organizations. We have more than 40 applicants, and out of those applications, we have been engaging with all of them. We already have identified a subset of entities that can be recommended to become a member. So making that assessment between the demand and the available offer in terms of the members is something that we will be better placed to do once we have the membership, at least the initial membership in place, because now it's just shaping up. And also once we have a better understanding of the demand, now we have one request coming from Vanuatu. But just perhaps to signal the overall request coming through that, through that specific one, the request is intended to develop a long-term program to enhance resilience. And this program, at least as being proposed, is nationwide. So there is this interest in developing a nationwide program that has a long-term horizon, and also one that can lead eventually to access to finance, possibly from the Fund for Loss and Damage. So just in a nutshell, that is part of the key content of the request. Of course, it has some specificities, but that's the main ask that we have in that specific request. Now, we will need also to see how that can be met with the OBNEs that will be in place very soon. We are now making an assessment of the submissions that have been made. And after that, also have a better understanding on how the supply and the demand meet each other, and if there are any gaps where we need to mobilize different types of membership. That's where we stand now.
Just on the question around local government, is the expectation that you will be receiving membership requests from local government, or would any local government requests need to go through the national level? Is that national level? I'm just wondering the engagement with local government.
That is right. Well, the support from the Santiago network is to go also at the local level, and that is part of our mandate. We need also to make sure that we have the way to mobilize local expertise to address those requests, but requests can come also from the subnational level. There is also an intent for those subnational requests to be well aligned with national plans, and to make sure also that the focal point from the country is informed, that they know that this request has come to us, and that there is no objection also for us to move forward. So seeking that alignment is also one that can help us with impact at the national level. So instead of having isolated requests, there is visibility of the whole at the country level, even if those are coming from local or subnational requests.
Okay, I came up with a hypothetical question because there were several scenarios that we went through during 3 days that we were at the conference. And first, congratulations that this information has reached children and youth group and they know about the network. There are a lot of professionals who do not know about it. So congratulations on that end. Hypothetically, and going to beyond the technical and inclusion of them as experts. Consider that done, they are included as experts. Can they, when it comes to already financial assistance, and Santiago Network will be there to provide technical guidance to where the money will go, right? That's my understanding, at least. Will children and youth in the technical assistance group be able to earmark the budget of the activities given out to youth-led activities? Because that was one of the requests, because children and youth request at least 10% of their budgets to be allocated to youth-led activities. Can they also influence in a manner the funding that will be going as an assistance money?
Okay. So to respond to your question, just to make sure I heard you correctly, if children and youth can be able to influence the aspect of funding given to them for technical assistance. Is that your question?
Even to the country or local community.
Okay. So once communities or from national, regional, or local level submit requests for technical assistance, depending on that group, and as long as it aligns with the national priorities of those countries, then, and also with what you need to do, like with the requirement for requesting for technical assistance is in place, then I think you don't have restrictions on what what that money is used for, as long as the budget is streamlined in the areas of building capacities for youth groups in that community. And that is just what it is. And the Santiago network in its mandate is not hell-bent to tell countries the kind of technical assistance they need. However, countries are required or requested to submit the kind of technical assistance they need to the network. Likewise, youth and children. So when youth and children submit technical assistance, because this was part of the sweet thing about the Santiago network was, at initial, we wanted to see following the mandate of country-driven support. But then, as youth and children, who is also at the board, and the network may consider it, they said, okay, you know what, we can be flexible to allow youth, to allow communities send in requests for technical assistance. And when this request is sent, is going to be evaluated and also check with the national, with the liaison persons and also with the national focal point of countries to make sure that these requests are nice with the national priorities. And if there's any objection, but in cases where there is no objection, then that request goes through. And this is what we are all campaigning for, an environment whereby the voices of children and youth are heard, and not just being heard, but also their actions or their voices are also being implemented as part of decisions of the UN. And the Santiago Network made that crystal clear. And for the activities, like I said, just for emphasis, as long as it aligns with what the national priorities are for your country, and also looking towards knowing that Santiago Network is aimed at providing technical assistance, which is knowledge-based, right? Knowledge-based that strengthens capacities, builds resilience, and catalyzes action in addressing loss and damage. As long as it's that knowledge-based, then I don't think the Santiago Network has any influence over your activities. And then we can't be able to tell you, you have to do this activity, because every action is locally led and is customized to fit into the work program, or to fit into the loss and damage events happening in a community. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. It just tells me that children just cannot influence it.
Children, why? Okay, if you say children and youth cannot influence anything, no,
I'm just kidding.
no. For the fact that we were able to come up with a plan whereby we say the request for technical assistance should not just be country-driven, but should reflect national, regional, and local level. I think that is the highest level of accepting our own request to make sure that children and youth are able to submit a request for technical assistance. That means you, with your organization, under UN being accredited, should be able to submit requests for technical assistance, while the secretariat will contact the liaison persons or the national focal points to make sure that these requests are nice before it is going to be approved by the secretariat. Likewise, too, if local level or regional level should submit this request, they are going to do some matchmaking to see, is this reflecting the national climate action plan of this country? And in scenarios whereby it is different, then there will be a balance, I think, somehow, to make sure that those requests is provided.
Then do you think that we are not talking about children and youth requesting assistance? What I want to talk about is children and youth providing the assistance. I want to focus on that. Can we in any way ensure that they are able to provide this assistance?
Children and youth can be part of OBNEs.
That's not enough.
They can be by OBNEs. OBNEs provide assistance, yes. So by OBNEs, once children and youth are members of OBNEs, you have capacity to provide assistance, all form of assistance, including assistance whereby children and youth could have funding and could write to the Santiago Network that they want to provide the technical assistance with the funding they have. They can do that. They don't restrict you to say, no, you can't do that. Yes.
Okay, so with that interesting round of discussion, let's move to the third round. Maybe I will invite Gideon, our indigenous population representative, population representative on the board, to replace Samuel, and I invite members of the audience to join us for the third round, please. And just to outline further what the point Samuel was making is that anybody in the country can request technical assistance. Any member from Santiago network can provide technical assistance. The requesting entity cannot be the provider of the assistance. That's the landmark. That's the yardstick that we always have to follow. So we have 2 more members of the audience, and we have 1 new member. And Carolina, you, for your sins, you are there on the panel. So next to you, please go ahead with your question.
Why always? Okay. Hello. Okay. Thank you so much. Again, welcome. It's our pleasure to really welcome you as the new executive director of the network. I hope your arrival means that the interim team is no more there, so you have the full space to do your work, and I really believe that. So now they will go to their job of host and offer you a very nice space for you to feel comfortable and to work. Yeah, but I was thinking about the mandate of the executive secretariat and a bit on the resources. So we know there are some pledges. The last year we are hearing now that Sweden is making some new pledges, but the money is not yet there. And you are there telling people that we will provide this and that. So which resources do you have currently to start doing the work? Because as you say, Vanuatu is there already waiting for you, and probably other countries. That's my first question. The second one is, when this debate around the loss and damage has started, the intention initially was not to provide technical support only. It was about really providing resources for people to really address loss and damage, especially at the community level. So is there any plan as a secretariat, is there any plan to channel some resources directly to the local communities where not only the technical assistance will be covered, but also explore innovative way to really deal with loss and damage on the ground?
Perfect. Many thanks as well for the questions in relation also to the resourcing part, and also any plans to inject innovation into the work of the Santiago network, including through how we provide funding and for which activities. Let me go first to the question about resources. We have, as you have mentioned, we have some contributions that have been confirmed, including from Switzerland, Germany, and Ireland. So we have initial resources as well to make sure that we start and that we can get the process up and running to provide technical assistance. So the resources for those initial requests are there, and we anticipate also other contributors coming up both with pledges and also with fulfilling the pledges that have been made. So that is in the plans, and we're following up closely with them in mobilizing the willingness to contribute. And of course, for that, we also need to demonstrate results and to build a track record so we can mobilize more and they can contribute more increasingly to the Santiago network. But yes, for the initial requests, we have resources. Now, in terms of your second point about the innovative, right? The innovative ways of supporting communities. We see that the work of the Santiago network needs to focus both on addressing the immediate needs, but also in terms of addressing the long-term requirements to build resilience in the long run at the country level and at the community level. Now our key priority is to roll out the technical assistance process in the way that has been outlined, including in the presentation, through the submission of requests, the advertisement of calls for proposals, and also making sure that we do the matchmaking between the demand side and also the OBNEs in the membership. That will be also a good basis to identify any gaps and come up with that innovation in terms of how those gaps can be met with the resources that we have as Santiago network. One of the areas where we need to work is also in creating the capacities at the local level to be able to provide technical assistance to the requests coming from communities and coming from countries. So that is part of capacity building also that we will be exploring further after we start with the technical assistance that is basically being rolled out as we speak.
Yeah, maybe try to respond also what he raised about the financial resources that should be channeled to the communities. I think it should be known that this is not a funding mechanism. This is a network where it brings, stakeholders, OBNEs, for knowledge sharing, expertise, and lesson learned. But there are minimum percentage that's allocated for communities, and it is not yet defined how much minimum percentage that we are talking about, but at least there are an attempt for the networks to provide some of financial resources to communities. So there is a dedicated sort of funding that are allocated as a minimum percentage for communities. But it should be known that this is not a funding mechanism. It's not like a fund for responding for loss and damage fund. This is a network that which would allow OBNEs to share experiences, but also to provide technical assistance to avert minimizing the loss and damage associated with the impact of climate change.
Okay. First of all, let me introduce myself. I'm Pratap, working with Mercy Corps due to Climate Resilience Alliance, and we are supporting government for some of the loss and damage studies that we are doing. So the recent one is we had a massive rainfall in the western part of the country with 624 millimeter of rainfall in one day. So it caused a lot of loss and damage. And there were some preliminary analysis which showed 1.57 or roughly 11 million loss and damage. But when it came to the analysis, what we realized is this whole assessment is based on the the framework of disaster assessment, damage and loss assessment. But when we talk about loss and damage, it's much more than that, if I understand it correctly. So now there is a framework, but there are no tools as such. I believe as Santiago Network would also be working on the capacity building and knowledge building. So is there any roadmap that we are trying to develop for developing the tools that would actually allow countries and the communities to assess loss and damage and report to globally accepted level? So that's my first question.
Thanks also for that question. We as Santiago Network, we are demand-driven. So any request that we receive is one that we are to translate into a call for proposals to identify who can help us meet that request. If that request also identifies the need for tools and you were noting tools to make an assessment, a thorough assessment, comprehensive risk assessment, then that is something also that we are to support in terms of technical assistance, but also in terms of identifying a member that can help that specific country or community with that request. So yes, we have various types of technical assistance that can be provided, and that includes these types of tools, methodologies, knowledge products that can help countries and communities have a better understanding of the risks, a more comprehensive understanding. So yes, provided it comes from the country or the community, considering that we're country and demand-driven.
Can I? Yeah. So I was fortunate enough to hear from the Bonn office during the APA MCDR, and we talked a lot about data sets and how there is a need to develop a strong data set. So it's emerging across the globe that the assessments are not into an acceptable level. So despite that, is there a necessity for any particular country to make a request to develop such tools, or it could be led independently by Santiago Network or any other UN agencies to develop such tools, because we are talking about the need across the globe, and we are talking about the data sets that needs to be there to justify the amount of support that is going to define the resources that is going to the community or the country. So how we are putting that into the picture and maybe thinking about it at Santiago Network, or yeah.
Thank you. Just coming up very quickly here. That speaks also to how important it is to collaborate with other pieces of the loss and damage institutional support system. There might be other areas that can be well placed to provide this support. The WIM EXCOM has done a lot of work in developing technical guidelines and also knowledge products. So that is one of the options forward. And they are working more with that global perspective, not based on the demand for specific countries, not based on specific requests, but more at a global level. So that coherence and collaboration with others to fill those gaps is something that becomes paramount. Thanks.
Yeah, a very quick last one. So, first of all, thanks for ensuring that there is a space for local communities. It's great to hear that, but it's also worrisome to know that we have some predefined percent, which might be low to some extent, but it's good to know that at least the reflection is there. Now, coming to the implementation of the Santiago network, which is a network for averting, minimizing, and addressing loss and damage. And we have the Loss and Damage Fund elsewhere, with now a director who is coming from the private and especially insurance sector, which is something I'm personally concerned about. How do you see the link between the network and the fund, which is there, in addressing again the loss and damage?
Excellent. Very pertinent question as well that speaks to that coherence and complementarity. And I have to say, we have a window of opportunity to establish constructive collaboration and synergies, because both the Fund for Responding to Loss and Damage and the Santiago Network were setting up our operations. So that also opens up a window of opportunity for that collaboration. We are to enable climate action and to enable a response to loss and damage. Part also of the results framework that was adopted by the board in the last board meeting speaks also to the role of the Santiago Network in supporting countries' access to climate finance and to finance for loss and damage, including coming from the Fund for Responding to Loss and Damage. So that is one of the areas, not the only one, but supporting countries with the origination, design, and the studies that are needed to come up with a program that can be submitted to the fund. That is one of the areas of work that are part of the Santiago Network, and that is already acknowledged in the results framework that was recently adopted.
So with that, let's give a big round of applause as we wrap up the session. You have been a very wonderful audience, and thanks for participation. So we are closing the session now, but feel free to stay back and continue the discussions. I'm sure there are many questions. Moving forward, we also have a couple of more events at the COP29. There's one high-level presidency event on 16th of November. And one thing which I observed was many of the questions that were being asked are very specific. So we know the challenges in terms of understanding a new mechanism. So on 19th of November in the Share Hub, the Salim al-Haq Research Hub, we'll organize a very specific session focusing on the guidelines only. So unpacking the guidelines and addressing all the questions, 1.5 hours of time. So please come to that session as well. The bottom line at the end is that if you don't ask for technical assistance, you don't get it. It's a demand-driven process, and hence that is how the whole system is meant to work. With that, let me wrap up the session, and thanks a lot, everyone. Please feel free to stay back and interact further with the panelists. Thank you very much.